Hi, everybody. Hey, we're coming to you from San Francisco. I am with my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Robert Tibbetts. Um, Affectionately, I call him Bob. We've known each other for years. Bob, will you just introduce yourself and what you do professionally? And
Sure. I am the Associate Director of Microbiology Lab at Henry Ford Health System in Detroit, Michigan. I do a lot of, obviously, clinical microbiology, but my research interests are in multiple antimicrobial resistance, as well as microbiome analysis, probiotics, things of that nature.
And please forgive the video quality. I'm not traveling with my usual camera rig that I use at my home, but hopefully this will work. And we are here in San Francisco at the American Society of Microbiology 2019 conference.
Yeah, general meeting called Microbe.
Yeah, and it's an annual event where all of the greatest minds in microbes and microbiology get together and share the latest and greatest. And I just wanted to take an opportunity to talk with you, Bob, about the gut microbiome and kind of what's the latest, greatest that's going on with this area of study.
Yeah, it's a tremendously vibrant area of study right now. The human microbiome, from the GI tract to the vaginal microbiome to just pretty much skin biome. Everything is all interconnected. There's just a lot of research going on regarding modulation of that using probiotics, better diets, and just how that affects overall health, from things as, maybe not simple, but things like rashes and autoimmune disorders to mental health issues, irritable bowel diseases like Crohn's disease, things of that nature. So it's very intense.
So I just did a post recently on my site about the interaction between gut microbes and the immune system, and that modulating that you talk about. Speak to that for a second about, what's the mechanics of that?
Right, yeah, it's great. The research on probiotics started decades ago, and it was really getting down to the basic research of what does a bacteria do, what byproducts do they produce, things, ranging from certain proteins, certain things like lactic acid, any number of different things that a bacteria can produce as a byproduct of its metabolism, and how it can affect other bacteria living in its surroundings. Certain bacteria can produce substances that keep other bacteria in check, keep them from growing. Good example is like Clostridium Difficile disease. Modulation of the gut microbiome facilitates Clostridium Difficile to grow. And then it takes over and it modulates the other bacteria by making the environment more conducive for C. diff to grow, and then you get C. diff disease because a byproduct of its growth is obviously toxin production. Sure. So there's some great research out there showing not so much now individual bacteria modulating others, but really all of the bacteria, the microbiome, how they all work together in concert with each other to make these changes for the good and sometimes for the bad, as in the case of C. diff.
Yeah. Okay, and I haven't spoken on my site yet about C. diff, but I know that people's lives are being saved by doing a fecal transplant, taking the microbia in a healthy person, putting them into the diseased person, and they're saving a lot of lives.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and we're talking thousands a month are being done across the United States. It's a thoroughly disgusting concept.
Sure.
But believe me, we do it at our hospital, and we do a lot of them, and we process it so it's not as gross as you might think it is. But that's exactly the situation. You're replacing all of those bad bacteria with good, healthy bacteria from a healthy donor. And I've seen cases personally where these patients were literally close to death because there was just no way to treat them, and within a couple of days of these transplants are sitting up in their bed, they're talking to their families, and it's just it's just changing that microbiome landscape to facilitate a healthy gut.
So then, for my viewers, lay people who are generally healthy but for the most part living in Western developed world, eating a Western diet, we know that say native peoples or people say in Africa or the Amazon forest have a greater diversity of bacteria within their gut environment, maybe 1,600 or so different species of bacteria, where in the Western world they have like a third less, maybe 1,200 or so. Should people be changing their lifestyle to try to introduce more healthy bacteria to them?
Yeah, it's a great question, and actually a great concept. A number of years ago, a theory came out called the hygiene theory. The hygiene theory basically said people who were born on farms, people who were hunter-gatherers, people who were exposed to soil and things of that nature have a lot less incidence of things like asthma and allergies. The theory goes on to say that the reason for that is because they've been spending a lot of time priming their immune system to modulate that and prevent these sort of autoimmunity diseases and asthmas and things like that. And so, people who live in the Western world, we eat a lot of processed foods. We eat a lot of things that are probably not good for us. We're eating a lot of donuts and carbohydrate laden.
We get more antibiotics.
Get a lot of antibiotics, absolutely. So in earnest, we're just simply changing that landscape for the worse. And I mean, again, the studies out there are just phenomenal, just showing those relationships of even modulating one bacterial species. There's actually something came out just not too long ago, and I apologize, I don't have the reference. I didn't memorize the reference, but they show that there's a certain mycobacterium species that can modulate what's called tumor necrosis factor alpha. This is an immune modulator that everybody has, and it can cause any number of things to go wrong with the immune response. Basically, a body attacking itself. And it was shown that people who live in more of the hunter-gatherer, millennia ago, had much higher levels of this. And when they were able to transfer this bacteria into certain types of mice strains, they found that they had a lot fewer incidents of things like irritable bowel syndrome, or even Crohn's disease. Absolutely. And again, it just kind of goes to show that we live in a society that we're not getting that good bacteria. And so I firmly believe that probiotics and utilizing them can be very, very beneficial to people.
So eat a few more veggies out of your own garden and don't get all the dirt off?
Right, yes, exactly, yeah. I mean, and that's absolute truth. I mean, you think about all these compounds they put on our vegetables, for example, because everybody's worried about getting infections. But quite frankly, there's billions and billions and billions of bacteria on everything that we touch, we look at, we put in our mouths, that aren't going to kill you. They're good for you, and that's the bottom line. And
so then, we live in a developed Western world. This is our environment, and is it reasonable to, as a dietary lifestyle, to just make simple changes to include what we know are healthy bacteria, lactobacillus strains, acidophilus strains, bifidobacteria, in our foods through either fermented foods or probiotic pills? Should everybody be at least doing that?
Yeah, I think it's a very reasonable thing to do. It's easy to do. I mean, if it's something as simple as eating yogurt, which you mentioned, bifidobacterium, is laden with it. I mean, I think it's a great idea.
Cool.
I would certainly do it myself.
Anything else you want to add from the world of professional microbiology that the layperson might find interesting?
Well, absolutely. I think I firmly believe after studying microbiome and just being interested in it, not necessarily doing research on it, but being very interested in it, reading papers and publications and that, is that I firmly believe that there will be a day, not too distant future, where getting our microbiome analysis will be as commonplace as getting a CBC on our blood. What is your composition? What does this person have, and how can we modulate that? What sort of downstream issues do they have, again, from something like maybe eczema or Crohn's disease? Can we modulate that somehow, more like a precision medicine sort of a scenario?
Sure.
Where, okay, that's what you have, let's change it. And I really see cool things going down with it. It'll be very commonplace. I really think that.
So perhaps, every baby that comes into the world comes in with mom and dad and grandma and grandpa's DNA, but then they also come into this world in a different way. There's natural childbirth, birth canal, and there's cesarean section.
Correct, yeah.
That'll all come into play.
Absolutely.
We'll test, and we will change how we raise this child.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it just reminds me of a very elegant study done in the 50s where they looked at the microbiome, or the bacterial normal flora of babies that were born by C-section versus babies that were born naturally. And they found that the babies that were born naturally had bacteria that matched their mother, which makes perfect sense. I mean, the process of childbirth is not sterile, I can tell you that. So then they looked at those babies born by C-section, and they found that the babies born by C-section had normal bacterial flora or microbiome that matched all the other babies in the nursery. So it kind of just goes to show you that as these nurses and these doctors were handling other babies, they introduced that to the babies that were literally born sterile. So from birth, we get bacteria, and if we can look at that microbiome at birth or shortly thereafter when the babies become finally firmly colonized, I think that we'll be able to use that to benefit health in general.
Wow, that's profound.
It is. It's very interesting.
Thanks.
You're very welcome. It's great
Appreciate
talking to
it.
you. Thanks, buddy.
If you want to stay informed about the latest in gut health, please like this video and subscribe. If you have a question or a comment, please leave it below. I always try to respond. And if you feel this information could be helpful to others, please share it. Thanks for watching.